Well, good afternoon, everyone who is watching now and who will be watching again later. Thank you so much for spending time with me this afternoon. We have this great new workshop. It's just been developed and it's in revision, and I have some exciting new content to add for you today. And it's called Downsizing Property Options, Not Just Condos. We're going to spend about half of the presentation talking about the motivations and obstacles to downsizing, because I think that whichever property you choose to go with, it has to be something that fits into the larger context of your life, that it's really not about house versus condo versus rental. It's really about what is going to bring you along in achieving your goals when you downsize. So we'll start high and then we are going to drill down, as they say, and get into the actual nuts and bolts of the options and the various strengths and weaknesses of each of those options, including the financials, because that's a big part of people's decision-making process. So let's get going. This is our agenda. We're going to deal with the two major forks in the road when it comes to property options. And at the very end, I'm also going to talk about some upcoming events, special offers and options for you. And so stick around to the end for that. There I am on a better hair day. My name is Sharon Parento. For those of you who are not familiar with me and my company, I work under the legal brokerage umbrella of Keller Williams Referred Urban Realty. But pretty soon into my career as a realtor, after having left teaching, I knew that I wanted to work with helping downsizers. So I started a company called S.M.A.R.T Realty Solutions, and we work almost exclusively with downsizing seniors, and have developed that system and the marketing and the attitude and the resources and the team that is necessary for this particular group of consumers. So that's how we have been operating. We are a proud supporter of chats in York region, York and Simcoe regions. Right from the beginning of our business, it was important for us to do fundraising for chats. So we have a twice annual paper shredding event and some other interesting initiatives that I hope will help give back to the community. So that's a little bit about me. But getting into the concept or the considerations behind downsizing is pretty much everyone is going to downsize. They're either going to leave the big home and move into something smaller, more manageable, or they are going to do the ultimate downsize, which is, staying in their homes right till the very end. There are pluses and minuses to both of those options, but if you're here today, you realize that downsizing is happening. And if you're like most of my clients, you want to be the one calling the shots. You don't want to be forced into a situation where you have to downsize, but rather become proactive and participate in the process rather than have it all just happen to you. So congratulations on being here and exploring your options. I think that's really super important, because when you know what your options are, you can make better decisions. So this is absolutely a key to moving forward, is being equipped this way. And I hope you're going to leave today feeling like you have a better understanding of those options. So, as I mentioned earlier, we really want to take this decision in a broader context. What are you hoping to achieve? There are people who have specific relational goals in mind when it comes to downsizing. Now, by that, I mean they want to move someplace toward where their family is, or stay in their community where their connections are. But either way, it involves a property decision that reflects that goal, the importance of that goal of staying in close contact with the people, the connections, the network that means the most to them. There are some other people for whom experiencing the ultimate freedom in retirement is their primary goal. And that could be pulling up stakes and moving somewhere completely new or experiencing a brand new way of existing as a senior. It could also be the financial freedom where they want to unlock the equity that's been tied up in their home for all of these decades and be able to do more interesting things with it than just pay for somebody to cut the grass and mow the lawn and shovel the snow. There's other people who are really thinking of it from a practical financial number crunching point of view, where it just doesn't make sense to inhabit this space, pay for 100% of it when you're really only living in, 30% of it at most. And then there are some people who unfortunately are on the verge of losing their autonomy in this decision. And so one of the things they really want to do is, you know, grasp onto that autonomy and keep it for as long as possible. So when you think of why you want to downsize, are you looking for a property option that is going to help you achieve your relational goals, your experiential goals? Are you characterized by the idea of a fresh start, an adventure? Is it something more perhaps practical minded that you just don't want the work and maintenance and having to manage this, property? Or is it to the point where you have crossed the line and there's some urgency to this decision being made where you have some limitations now on the number of options that you can reasonably explore? So everyone is a mixture of these different motivations, but there's one that kind of echoes, I think, resonates with you probably more strongly than others. And that's what we want to aim for. That's where we're heading. And by saying yes to one thing, it means you have to say no to a variety of other things. If your family is nearby, well, then, you know, relocating to Sorrento, Italy is not in the cards. And if you are at a point where your mobility, your health, your personal wellness is a high priority, well then, moving to a different community where you are no longer undergirded by that health network is probably not a great idea either. So saying yes to certain things means saying no to others. But everyone who is watching this, either now or later, has not yet downsized. And it would be interesting for me to know what has been holding you back. If this is something that makes good common sense, something that you recognize is in your future, why hasn't it happened before now? I'm going to suggest that the most common objections or obstacles that I hear kind of fall into practical issues and emotional issues. The connection to the family home, the difficulty in sorting out kind of what goes, what stays, the letting go. So there is a list that I've heard so many times, it's not even funny. There's probably no obstacle that I have not encountered in my 10 years of being a downsizing realtor. A lot of it, like I said, just a lack of knowledge. There's a knowledge gap. I don't know where to go. I don't know who can help me. I don't know um, how much money I need to retire. Like, I don't know X. You fill in the blanks. And then there are the kind of heart issues where it is, I don't want to have to leave my garden behind, or I don't want to think of a condo because I have this dog that needs letting out multiple times a day, or various things like that. So the constraints that we put on those options are very real. We have to acknowledge them. I also see a situation arising where we have a difference of opinion between spouses. And I'm going to say this is the hardest one to navigate, really, because one partner is the gas and one person is the brake. And I'm going to say not always, not, but a broad generalization, it feels to me like more of the husbands in the couple are not interested in moving, that their lives are really unchanged since retirement. Now that somebody is doing the lawn and another person is doing the driveway, their little domain is safe and secure. But it's oftentimes, I find, the wife in the partnership who is just getting tired of cooking and cleaning and maintaining a house larger than they need. So it's not always the case, but very frequently we do see a disconnect between partners. And that is definitely a conversation requiring gentle, careful, persistent negotiation. So the last one is very common too. I speak with seniors who will say they're taking me out in a pine box. To which I say, well, you really don't like your kids very much, do you? It's tongue in cheek, but the idea of leaving all this behind for your kids to have to sort through and deal with is really not a kindness. So there is a window of opportunity. It does get harder as we age. No matter what age you are today, as you're listening to this, it's only going to get harder. And this is not to be overly pessimistic. It's just the reality. I see it in myself. I see it in my mom. I saw it in my grandparents, where as we age, our tolerance for change and managing a multifaceted process like moving is just overwhelming. So luckily, there are professionals all around who can help you overcome these obstacles. The question isn't really why haven't you, but it's more like who can help you? Who can you bring into the situation to guide you, to provide physical help, emotional support, all of those things that are going to be required to get you from A to B. So, whatever your blockage is, I'm going to tell you, you've gone through way worse in your life. You don't get to our age without having gone through some stuff, right? So, it's really just a matter of saying, okay, this is my obstacle. This is what's holding me back. And here are 3, 4, 5 things I can do in this little mind map, this brainstorming of who I can ask for help. What are my next steps? And just making a plan to overcome. And part of what's going to pull you along as you go through the humps and bumps of downsizing is really thinking about the positive. I've kind of focused on some of the negative up until now, but it's the positive that is really what we're moving toward. As much as we are moving away from things back at the old house, we are also moving towards a new way of living in whatever new home you choose. So think of it from that standpoint, that there are lots of things your money could be doing. That money that is tied up in the bricks and mortar of your home, it could be doing really incredible things for you, for your lifestyle, for your loved ones. According to Ipsos Reid, the Canadian pollster company, 17% of Canadians anticipate someday downsizing to help their adult children enter the real estate market. Now, I have 4 adult daughters, and one of them has been set up with her own home, but it's in Scotland, and the price differential is incredible. But so I didn't have to stretch that hard. But I have 3 more of them that need places, and I can see that one day that is going to be the bank of mom and dad, or in my case, mom and mom, who are going to help my children with their downsizing expenses. So there are interesting things to do, to travel while you still are young enough to enjoy it. This is like something that is on so many people's wish lists. Also, helping your children or maybe grandchildren while you are here to enjoy watching them benefit by it. Making a donation while you can still get the the tax credit, tax deduction, and paying off debt and making a nest egg that you can invest wisely to pay for your changing needs in your retirement scenario. So Our needs are not static. Our finances are not static. We are flexible, dynamic people living lives that need to prepare for the now and the later and the hereafter. So, right now, your focus is on lifestyle, but gradually as we age, that's going to transfer over to concerns about legacy. So let's make sure we know what's happening for us and what it can do. So I love this picture of this will be me the next time I'm in a gondola. I will be definitely snoozing, but don't wait to take that big trip. We only have one life. It's so short. We know all the time that things are happening to people unexpectedly. Let's make the most of every day. Carpe diem. While we are carping and DMing, we want to make sure that we are the ones in the driver's seat. That's so key because we know time is marching on and things that we can't control, but there's a lot we can control. So, one of the questions I hear all the time is now a smart time to downsize? Well, there isn't one answer. This is unique to you and your circumstances. One of the things I want to think about asking you is how do you want to downsize? Is this going to be like about 85% of my clients, they go from the family home to a smaller property of some sort, like a condo or, maybe a townhouse or whatever. So they do it in phases. And then about 15% of my clients go directly from the home into a retirement community where they plan to, age in place. So that's one question. My own parents have done it kind of gradually smaller, smaller. And, there's not a right or a wrong. It's really about whether or not this is your kind of age and stage. The other thing we want to talk about is how quickly you want to do this. If you are in under a year in terms of your timeline, well, there are things we need to get going on pretty darn soon. It's a fairly time intensive process getting ready to move. Just from figuring out where do you want to go, never mind preparing your home. And there's going to be some legwork that's required. If you have 24 months or more before you want to make a move, well, then figure out what the kind of general plan is, hold it loosely, and then also identify what the trigger will be. Like some people will say to me, well, my husband is working for another 2 years, or I want to get my kid out of the basement first, and they're just getting into their first job and building up credit and all of that. So there are some very realistic timelines that are involved with those things, but there are still things you could be doing now, mentally preparing, starting with some of the things in your home, and we're going to take you through that in a second. So, what has to happen in your world to make the timing right? And this is a very individual question. And what will your triggers be? Is it going to be just that you're fed up with the work? It's nothing very urgent, or it's going to be something like, well, I'm going to stay here. I've had clients who say this all the time. I'm going to stay here as long as I can manage the stairs. Personally, how are you going to know you can't manage the stairs? Like that to me triggers a bit of fear for me. Um, I worry that it'll be the result of something, not good that makes them decide they want to move rather than doing it ahead of time. So, but just know what will your trigger be? Another big consideration about the timing of your decision and where you're going to go next is based on your age and stage. So many seniors are afraid of outliving their money. And even though the idea, for example, of a retirement community is very appealing, they know that they're expensive and they want to make sure that they have enough money that they don't outlive their money. So I see this particularly with my own mom. She is probably too young for a retirement community, as much as they are very appealing to her. But if something were to change and she was to require more care, well, then that's just what has to happen. That's the purpose of the equity tied up in the house all those years, is to pay for your retirement. So, what makes financial sense? And this is really where the rubber starts to hit the road. And as I mentioned to you, we were going to start off very high level, thinking about kind of your life in general, broad strokes, but now we want to get into some of the nitty gritty. For example, what makes financial sense? Well, it depends, as I've been saying to you, what age and stage you're at. If you are a young retired person, a newly retired person in your first decade or so of being retired, we have noticed kind of statistically that sometimes your spending can go up. It might flatline during your slow go years when you are not interested in the big, round the world trips anymore or doing quite as much. You're a little bit more of a homebody, so your cost of living can actually decrease. And then as you enter into the third decade of retirement, your costs can actually go up, especially related to medical care. So planning for your future financially has to take into consideration that the life you're experiencing now, that you're enjoying now, is not going to necessarily be the same cost as what your life will be 10 or 15 years from now. So the go, the slow go, and the no go are all terms to try to help assess what your future needs will be. So putting yourself in this timeline can help you make sure you don't run out of money. So this to me is a very interesting schematic, a little infogram kind of infographic. All the way along during your working life, you are spending, probably increasing your spending over time as you buy the bigger house, the kids get, older, off to university. Your savings is especially important as you approach that retirement time frame. Your need for insurance and protection for your family is fairly consistent. Um, but then once you retire, there can be a big increase over time, as this shows, with not only your basic living, but initially with health and lifestyle needs changing over time as well. So these are some things to plan for from the financial standpoint of making a decision to downsize. Moving on. So just out of kind of idle curiosity, I pulled the statistics for just Aurora. No particular reason that it was Aurora, it was just Aurora. And looking at the averages, if you're in a detached home, the average is about a little over $1.5 million. If you were to go to a freehold townhome, the the variance between the average is about $400,000. If you were to go into a condo townhome, it's about $500,000. And if you were to go from the detached home to the average condo in Aurora, it could be as much as $800,000. So that is a beautiful little nest egg for investment, for future need. So you still have a place to live. It's not like you have sold and you have nowhere to go now. You've purchased something else. And that's the delta between those two average home values. Okay, makes sense? So many seniors are asking me this. I get asked this practically daily. Well, what about timing the real estate market? I don't think it's the most important thing for most people. Right now, we are in a slower real estate market. There is no doubt about it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is slower, but anything you were going to buy has also been affected by the same market conditions. As a matter of fact, at the peak of the market, which was March 2022, everything that was selling in the detached realm was very, very expensive, very high, 25% higher than it is now. But so was everything you were buying. Now, whatever the water is doing, they say rising water floats all boats. Everything is rising and falling virtually in tandem. Uh, However, because of different changes in big economic things that are happening in our country, condos have fallen proportionately lower. So actually, the gap is better now in today's market than it was back at the peak of the market. So what your nest egg will be is likely the same or even larger to sell under these market conditions than waiting for 2022 to come back. There's another thing that was really bothering me about this idea that people are waiting. It's going to take so long to recover that 25%. It is far wiser to take the money out and invest it. Those investments will do better for you than the real estate market would. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, and I have to put parentheses around all of what I'm telling you about financial information, that I'm basing it on my own experience as an investor, my own experience as a homeowner, and working with the clients that I do. So you have to get professional advice, and I am not it. I'm a realtor. I'm not a money market manager or anything like that. This is for you to determine. But the last time we had such a decline, it took about 12 years to recover. And that's pretty much what's being anticipated here. 8, 9 to 10 years is going to take, because it was like that huge peak borrowed from the average for the next 10 years. So if you were to draw an average straight line across this, you would see that it's going to take some time to get back to where we were. I don't think it's the most important thing, because if you're buying something, it is much lower than, like a condo is much lower than it was. So just something to consider. So we've talked about the broad strokes here. We've talked about my general recommendations to make downsizing fit your lifestyle rather than some fantastical wish that we go back to 2022 pricing. Now it's time to get into some of the actual property options. And I mentioned to you at the beginning, there's a dividing road, and the road is that you sell your property and you buy something, or you sell your property and you rent something. Those are basically, the only two things available. So let's talk about selling and leasing. There is a compelling argument to be made for older people leasing or renting instead of buying. No 90-year-old should hold real estate, in my opinion, because the chances of that having to be probated for their estate is so much higher. It would be far better to make proactive financial plans through a qualified professional, so that your estate is not paying that probate and that the sale is not held up in any way. So there are 3 basic options when it comes to leasing. The vast majority fall into this first category of a private small investor who has a property that they own or properties that they own, and they lease them out on a per door basis. Our government has not kept up with incentivizing development of purpose-built rentals. There are a few. They are coming back to the market more recently, but there's still such an overwhelming demand that cannot be met by the existing supply. It's like previous governments decided to privatize the whole rental market from pretty much the 1970s on. So you can be working with a landlord who owns this place. Let's say it's a condo and you're renting directly from them. The other option is that you are renting in a purpose-built rental building. They're few and far between. They don't have too many like spacious options. They tend to be much smaller, especially if they are rent controlled or they are subsidized. And then the other option is to lease in a senior's retirement residence. Now, I know the big pushback on this one is going to be the cost. Yeah, they are about twice as much as would be in the private sector. But you're buying into or you're renting into a community with amenities that are seniors geared. You cannot be evicted. They are ready there. If your needs change, you're in their ecosystem and you can apply for increased support. There's a lot of advantages to them. And I'm going to tell you, I had some preconceived notions about them before I started into real estate because my point of reference was Bendale Acres with my great grandma when I was 4. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't want to put my pets there, never mind an old person. But these have really changed and they're all different price points. Yes, the Amicas are the 5-star resorts, but there are lots of 4 stars and 3 stars that are pretty decent as well. So you have to do your homework, but I'm no longer personally scared about this as an option for myself down the road. Anywho, the the pros are essentially you have fixed costs. You're not worrying about a mortgage payment that goes up and down. You can plan for things. You can close the door and leave. Anything that breaks is somebody else's problem. Obviously, in general, the cons are that you are not in the real estate market anymore. So the portion that you are now going to invest and live off of is subject to income tax, where when your property was increasing in value, that was not that capital gains tax is exempt for your own primary residence. So there are some cons, and we're going to get into a specific case study when we get further down the road. Uh, the private lease option. This is when you go to rent from a private landlord. There are strengths, there are weaknesses, there are opportunities, and there are threats. This is a SWOT analysis to just break this down. I mean, can read. I will be sending this to you, but I'm going to tell you just anecdotally. This shocked me. I've been working with a client to get a rental property at Yonge and Eglinton because of its high walkability. She didn't want to have to drive anymore. And to my shock, it's actually quite tough to find a landlord, a private landlord who will take a senior. And I made the mistake of saying, well, she's looking for a long-term rental. She's going to be an excellent tenant, happy to stay, yada, yada, yada. They don't want people to stay for 5 and 10 years. They want to turn over so that they can adjust the rental rate. So that was something that was a big surprise to me. The other thing that was a surprise was that we had to do quite a bit of financial disclosure to prove, because the landlords only have one point at which they can check that you can afford their unit, and that's at the beginning during your application phase. So we had to disclose some of her financial documents to show that she was sitting on this big pile of money. And even though she only had Canada pension, an old age security, and a couple of, a small pension from her spouse. She was sitting on a whack of cash, but her monthly income did not look like she could afford this. So we had a couple of no's before we changed our game plan and found a yes. So that was an interesting thing for me. It's a great way, though, if you are going to a brand new community, to try it out before you buy something. You might not know if there is a good side of the tracks or a bad side of the tracks in Canmore, Alberta. You might not know if you are going to really like living in Niagara on the Lake. Like, these are ways that you can try something out for a year. The minimum lease is a year. And after that, you can agree with your landlord to sign it for another year, at which case, you're protected. Or if you don't renew for another year, You are now on what they call a month by month, and your landlord can evict you with as little as 60 days notice. So there are definitely some concerns in terms of stability there. A retirement community, you can try before you buy in a retirement community too. You can try it out, and do a short-term stay there and get a feel for the place, for the culture. There are, I guess, the big weakness is that some people find it a threat to their self-image. I'm not that person. I'm not one of those old people. But as I said, in my own experience, I've toured probably 30 or 40 retirement communities, and I can tell you the one I want to go to. It's the Sorrento up in Bolton, because the food, they got a pizza oven. I would be 900 pounds. But there's really nice places, and then there are places that are not as nice. You just have to go see them. So within the retirement community, they're not all the same in terms of the level of care and the corresponding level of cost. They are building more and more of a new model of seniors independent living, where you have your own kitchen, full kitchen, not just a kitchenette, and own laundry. So that, to me, it's just a seniors rental within this bigger community. I think that's a really smart idea for them, because not everybody is cut out for communal meal taking, and if you don't want to play shuffleboard, nobody's going to twist your arm and make you. Like, it's there if you want it, but in this newer model that they are building with fully independent suites. Like, I know my mom, she wouldn't want to give up cooking quite yet. She enjoys cooking her own meals. She likes her own cooking. Other people totally fed up and they don't want to have to think about what to cook again today. So everybody is different, and you can choose your level of care and the corresponding level of price. Okay, so anyone who moves into a retirement community that is privately owned will sign a residency agreement like a lease. It is pretty much the equivalent of a lease, but it doesn't end. That's the big advantage of a retirement community, is that you're there for the duration or until you decide you want to move out. So that is a big, and you are paying them directly for the services that you are using. So these are for profit. There's also not profit. There's government agencies that are overseeing them and also addressing costs. So those are subsidized, those are supportive housing, and those are long-term care. Those are all different terminology. There's quite a bit of verbiage associated with this sector that it's important to distinguish between. Okay, so I'll send this out. We're not going to spend too much time on this now. I want to move along. The other option, as I said, the big fork in the road, is to sell and buy. There are, oh, that was back for the other one, independent seniors rentals. I did some research about places that have full kitchens, full laundries. If you would like that, I can send it to you. Selling and buying. Now, within this general division, you can buy a smaller home, you can buy outside the GTA, you could buy a condo, or you could buy a leasehold property. This is a special category. We'll get to it in a moment. The smaller house options. I'm going to say this is like the myth of the bungalow. So many of my clients say, well, I'm going to move to a bungalow. Well, there are some advantages for sure. Anything smaller is going to have a smaller maintenance, smaller utilities, smaller everything. It's obviously going to be cheaper to renovate a smaller home than a large one. But it feels to me like a lot of your equity is still going to be tied up in that property. It might end up being like a lateral move, that you are moving from a two-story in your neighborhood to a bungalow in your neighborhood. There may not be a lot of cost savings there. and you haven't really dealt with the exterior maintenance that comes along with being a homeowner. So this could be a good option depending on, your age and stage and your wellness and all of that. But you might have just kind of created one set of um, maintenance concerns for another. A condo is a very popular option. I can't get away from it. I know this presentation is supposed to be about beyond condos, but I'm telling you, it makes so much sense for so many people. I have to include it. The idea that you don't have to worry about the gardens anymore or the snow shoveling, that somebody is going to be there and making sure the basic systems are operational, the elevator, the heating, the cooling, the windows are going to get it washed, the underground parking is going to be power washed twice a year. Those things are going to happen for you, and you don't have to take any part in organizing it. Most of the time, I mean, not always, there are lots of new two-story condos being built, but a lot of times it's living on one level. That's great for aging in place. You can turn the key and go. It doesn't matter if you are here, up at the cottage, France, it doesn't matter. Your place is there, and you're not as concerned about big system failures like you are when you're a homeowner. A lot of people have an issue with the maintenance fees, forgetting that it costs. I ran this through a calculator the other day. It costs about $30,000 to live in a detached home. Um, when you're looking at the difference in the property taxes, the utilities that you have to pay for, the exterior maintenance that you may start hiring help for, and then just replacing things like furnace and windows and air conditioning and yada, yada, yada. So there is a trade-off. When living in a condo, you have to abide by the rules and regulations. Pets, barbecues, smoking, visitors, all of these things have to be thoroughly investigated to make sure that they don't impinge on your daily life in this condo. But condos are not all skyboxes that are 600 square feet. That's what everybody's preconceived notion about a condo is. But their condos can be low rise. They can be what we are calling boutique condos, where they're 4 or 5 stories high, and that's it. I also referenced condo townhouses. These are a fabulous middle option for somebody who doesn't want to take care of the outside, can still manage the stairs, and doesn't mind living on multiple levels. And then there are a few developments with condo detached homes, bungalows, or 2 stories. They're few and far between, but they do exist. Typically on the perimeter of the city. You don't find too many of them like in the city proper, but I know I'm thinking east to Ballantrae or Swan Lake, or north to like north of Brampton area, kind of just on the verge of Uxbridge. There's a bunch of them up there as well. So they exist, but the basic lesson here is that condos are not a building type, it's an ownership type. So you own your unit and then you are paying towards the accumulated cost of running the rest of the development. So we always do a lot of due diligence when we are buying a condo for our clients, including looking at their health financially, what the rules and regulations are. This is all contained in a document, a series of documents called the status certificate. And we never purchase a condo without a lawyer going through that status certificate and looking for potential red flags related to the operating budget and the schedule of maintenance fee increases that should be expected. So condos, we do have maintenance-free bungalows. There's a few of them around. You can request a list if that's of interest to you. This is a booklet that I've written called Condo Considerations. We hand it out at any one of our condo tours that we do with the people coming with me in my van. We go look at condos in an area. It's a lot of fun. You can request it separately though too as well. Outside the GTA, the biggest pro is that your money is going to go further. There's also a small town quality of life. And if you were to buy the same house that you live in now outside the GTA, you would realize a chunk of money in the differences in the price. But again, it's how much of your future needs are you really just kind of pushing down the road. The leasehold, this is something that this is an unusual property. There are not that many of them around, but a life lease is probably a more familiar term for most people. There's one right here in Don Mills, not too far from where I live. And these are where you are purchasing an ownership agreement. It's almost like a timeshare, but it's for the rest of your life. You don't own the unit you're in, so you don't pay property tax. But and also because this is a life lease, the value of the property that you're buying, it's lower than if it was just a straight condominium. So you could perhaps realize a $200,000 difference in a straight two-bedroom, two-bath condo and a two-bedroom, two-bath apartment in a life lease. That could be the differential. They're harder to sell. They can age restrict in a way that you can't do in a regular condo. And they are run usually by an overarching not-for-profit. Some of them are religious based, some of them are not. So I'm thinking of like the Meadows in Aurora. That's an example of a life lease where you buy your way into living there at a certain price point. And it's harder to resell them if you were to change your mind down the road or for your estate because they are such a niche product. Okay, so this is the new. This is from actual clients, and we're going to go through in the time remaining. I want to show you the differential between the outcomes here. And now, not everybody is starting at the same starting point, right? But I just want to give you, these are real life. Notice I changed Karen in the slide, made her a little younger. So she sold a condo townhouse. And after all of her costs were paid, moving, closing costs with the lawyer, HST on the commissions, she had about $800,000 to invest. She decided to go the way of renting. She's the client that we've found a rental at Yonge and Eglinton. And her rent for the first year ran her about $44,000. That was including her utilities and her tenant insurance. At the end of the second year, end of the first year, she realized she didn't really need a two-bedroom, that she was going to go down to a one-bedroom. And in the same building, she found a different unit for rent. And over her 10-year investment, she started off with $800,000 or so, and that is going to grow to at the end of 10 years to about 1.3 million. Now, as I said, there's some things that are not factored in here, like the tax she will pay on her investments. That is taxable income. But it as a senior, it is at a lesser rate than when you were working. So it's a marginal difference. I've figured it out further with the tax implications, but I just want to give you the basics that over 10 years, she is going to make a very good return on her money, taking the whole chunk and investing it. Okay, so we've gone over the strengths and weaknesses, the pros and cons. I want to move on to the next scenario. And this was an interesting one. Gary sold a luxury home in Unionville for about $1.9 million. He paid commission and HST and closing costs and moving costs, and his total was 1,800,000, let's say approximately. He bought a condo for $605,000. He had to pay the municipal land transfer tax. Because he bought in York Region and not in Toronto, he only had to pay the one tax, and that's stated there. His total purchases were amounted to $613,000 and it left him with almost $1.2 million to to invest. His property tax, his condo maintenance, which included all of his utilities on an annual basis, was about $17,000 a year. At the end, he's going to be in a very, very comfortable position of over 10 years having doubled his initial investment. You can safely, I think it was, I read this somewhere, you can safely draw down about 8% a year without ever touching your principal. So for him, that's going to be a very sizable nest egg, to pay for his future care, to bequeath to his heirs, to do with whatever he wants. So he is sitting in a very privileged position. Let's say that for sure. And then we have Steve and Kathy, and these are personal friends of mine. And they moved from Toronto to London. And actually, they ended up kind of upscaling in a way because they were in a beautiful condo, but they were able to make their money go even further in London, Ontario, close to where their children live. And they bought themselves a condo bungalow out there. So it was in a gated community, and they did not have as much of a differential between what they sold and what they bought. But you can see that they had about $800,000 left over from their sale. They spent $650 approximately. They had some land transfer tax, and that left them with a little over $130,000 to invest. But even still, they paying their property taxes being lower and their condo fees being lower, that is going to, over time, be within that 8% that they'll be earning on their investment. So ideally, they will never have to touch that investment. It'll just keep growing and growing. So every one of these scenarios is based on an actual case study from real life clients, and the numbers are actual numbers. Again, I'm not looking at the taxes that they would pay because everybody is very individual based on their overall income, or the potential perhaps for clawbacks on their pension from the government. Like, there's a lot of small niggly things, but I think you can see that different scenarios have different financial outcomes, and these are all things that we can plan for in advance. So there are a bunch of really new kind of co-housing options that seniors are looking into. It could be that you co-house with a child. I have had clients who have looked for specific properties that have the ability to add or already have a basement suite. Sometimes the basement suite is for the kids, and sometimes the basement suite is for the parents. So there is a lot of people who are choosing to live together multi-generationally. There is also this whole Golden Girls. I think this is such an interesting idea. And there are organizations throughout Ontario that are matching seniors to live together in shared housing, sharing the costs, purchasing something on a shares basis, or like the Green Box, fractional ownership. So there are lots of cooperative buildings in Toronto is one way. And then there is, I just lost the word for it. There are condo apartments near us that are co-ownership, where there is no board of directors or whatever. Everybody has an equal share. There are some implications there to getting financing. They can be a little trickier, but they definitely exist. And now, new legislation for intensification of properties for garden suites and laneway housing. All of this is happening within the GTA as well. And that's so interesting. I've had clients too who were looking at a corner lot, a house with a corner lot, and the children were going to live in the house, the existing house, and they were going to create an auxiliary suite with a driveway on the side street. And that was going to be how they all lived together. So that's super cool. There's some other interesting out of the box ideas too. Um, like there are, I didn't realize this, there are full season retirement communities geared to seniors that are essentially mobile home parks. Like I only think of those as being seasonal, but there are lots of those too. So there are tiny home parks coming up. And there's also some of my clients are interested in seasonal subletting where they spend the summer up at the cottage and they lease or sublet. They are subleasees from somebody just for the winter months when they can be back in the city and doing all their doctor appointments and going to Ed Mirvish and all of that. So it's interesting. Even though there are very common options, I think the world is changing and the market is changing to allow for some of these less common options to be given consideration. So I want you to think about the questions you might have. You're welcome to type them into the chat box if that's good for you. I just want to share with you what's coming up. What are some of our free offers that we want to make you aware of? No matter what you are doing, 99% of everyone, myself included, needs to declutter. You can request a copy of the decluttering battle plan. It's free. You just can email me or respond to the follow-up emails that you're going to get after today's presentation. And this is a way to get started because it's the most valuable thing you can do to increase the resale value of your home is to declutter. Okay, so every one of my clients gets help decluttering. I go there, I provide boots on the ground assistance, and this is a great place to start. So there's also the 30-day decluttering challenge. I find so many people have a hard time getting started. And so this is just an email campaign to remind you to do a few little tasks over the course of a month. These are all like 20, 30-minute tasks. It doesn't have to be onerous. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So we're going to start, for example, in the front hall closet, just getting that done and starting to take care of this because it's not going to do it by itself. So this is something you can also request. I am starting to book speaking engagements at Probus clubs and church groups and synagogues and seniors and community groups into the fall and winter and following spring. I like speaking to groups. I really enjoy it. I feel like, especially the decluttering battle plan is a very general, broad-based appeal. Everybody has too much stuff. So if you know of a club that's looking for a speaker, I would very much appreciate the mutual introduction. And then I can send them my follow-ups with the options. Never a sales job. There's no sales pitch. I always have a nice door prize, those kinds of things. Now, the other thing, if you are thinking about downsizing, and it doesn't have to be now, it doesn't have to be, it can be something that you know is on the horizon, but you really would just like some insight about things you could be doing now to get ready for that. I would be very happy to have a sit down with you. I'll bring the tea and coffee. And we can just talk about what the options are, and you'll come away with some better ideas, some practical next steps. There's not a cost, there's not an obligation, but you can request this downsizing consultation either by phone or by Zoom or in person. And I'm happy to help you get started on this. I just think there's so many things, so many, like my daughter says, too many tabs open. Let's close a few tabs and get you some clarity. With clarity comes power, and you'll have confidence about the things that you want to do. That's the number one thing people gain from these consultations is confidence. All right. So do you have any questions that you'd like in our time remaining? I think what we'll do is I will stop the recording. And then if you feel like you want to ask and you don't want to necessarily be on camera asking that, then